Hello everybody and welcome back, where today we're talking about Epyka, a PSVR2 game that dropped on the PS Store yesterday, where you take on the role of an archaeologist professor trying to find the source of civilization and whatever lies beyond. Now, does this PSVR2 adventure puzzler hit the spot, or does it fall short? We're going to be talking about that today, but before we do, only 25% of you are subbed to the channel, so please feel free to do so, and thank you to our patrons and members who help keep the channel going day after day and week after week. With that being said, let's dive straight in. First and foremost, the story of Epyka is decent enough. It's a fun setup, you have no idea what you're going into, but you know you're trying to find Epyka, which is that first human civilization. You're picking up from where your dad left off, and that gives you stakes in the story of why you're trying to find this place after all. There are a couple other characters, one which helps you along your journey, and a companion dog. And yes, you can pet the dog. The story is either given to you via exposition or some quite nicely modelled and artistically drawn cutscenes that teach you the history of Epyka and everything that happened there, but I didn't really find that there were too many twists or turns that I didn't really see coming. It's quite by the books in terms of how it plays out. Overall though, the story was decent enough to keep me engaged, but nothing groundbreaking. The runtime of Epyka lasted me about 1 hour and 40 minutes, and for the price tag of $10 on the Meta Store, or about £8 here in the UK, I'd say that's about alright, to be honest. You'd pay the same for a cinema ticket to go and see a movie that's about 2 hours long, and depending on how proficient you are with puzzles, it'll either take you a short amount of time or a long amount of time to get through the game, but ultimately there is a fair bit of content here for the price, but don't expect a 4 to 10 hour long VR adventure. The actual price on the PlayStation Store at the time of me recording this isn't out yet, so I can't tell you how much it is, but by the time this review is out, it will have dropped, so feel free to go and look for yourself and decide whether or not you think that justifies the runtime. The game's puzzles aren't too difficult, from matching up secret symbols to using a mirror to unveil hidden areas to progress, to going through Doctor Strange style portals to try and find your destination and navigating mazes. There's quite a bit to do in terms of the variety of puzzles throughout Epyka, although I did find that they're probably geared more towards kids rather than adults in their difficulty. There was only one puzzle that stumped me, and that was only because the ending of it broke, so it didn't actually let me progress, and I'll get onto that in my negatives section, but for the most part, they took a little while to complete, but aren't too difficult, and I'm not really a puzzle player, so I'm sure if you're experienced in puzzlers, you'll have absolutely no problem at all. For actual gameplay, you grab and move things, pick up items, choosing which path to walk and where to go, and that's about it. It's quite simple in terms of gameplay, and the movement speed is fairly slow, but it can be adjusted in the settings. Towards the end of the game though, you use a crystal that is integral to the plot and you have with you throughout the entire game to deflect some attacks and also to interact with objects using kind of like a telekinetic power sort of laser, which allows you to complete the further puzzles and finish the game. But this is only in the last 20 or so minutes. If you do get stuck on any of these gameplay elements or puzzles, the protagonist himself will speak and say what you should be doing, or one of your companions will help you. The world and game design is also quite charming. It looks very sharp in the headset, although of course the textures are fairly plain because this is an indie game, but some of the lighting work, shadows and particle effects especially, are genuinely impressive, and I really enjoyed playing through the game and seeing the sights it had to offer. Before we dive into the PSVR2 specific stuff about the game, let's talk about accessibility. You've got everything you'd expect here: smooth turning, snap turning, smooth locomotion, teleport, blinders, and seated and standing modes. There is no artificial crouch in this game though, however you don't need it. If you drop an object, it will go back into your tool belt, so you'll be able to pick it up from there instead of having to bend down, so that omission isn't really something to harp on. Okay, editing jammy here, we're gonna have to pause for a second. Essentially, the issues I'm about to talk about apparently have been fixed, aside from the elevator one where it didn't come down. I haven't seen that one fixed in the patch notes, but essentially the build I've been playing didn't have the day one patch, apparently, and that was just kind of how it was for the review build. So the stutters and the crashes apparently have been fixed. I do not have enough time to jump back in and test that, unfortunately, and play through the game again. I'm a little bit swamped with other stuff, but apparently they've been fixed. I'm still going to keep the review as is going forward because it's useful to know my experience with the game and the issues that I ran into, but allegedly, according to the devs, they should be solved day one for you guys. I have just seen a patch has gone out on my end, so hopefully they are, but I'm leaving this in just for kind of context of the issues that I did run into, but you shouldn't technically run into them in your build. Anyway, let's continue. Now let's talk about the PSVR2 specific areas for Epyka, and this is where the game falls apart a little bit more for me, unfortunately, at least in my experience. Throughout the game I had a couple of issues. One of them being frame rate, especially in areas that have multiple portals which you go through that lead you to different parts of the world, and when a new area opened up, I did get quite heavy frame drops and the game became quite choppy. And that kind of goes against this being kind of like a kid-friendly or beginner-friendly game, because everything else about it is easy in terms of VR locomotion and motion sickness, but those frame drops would genuinely make somebody sick, I think, so that's quite unfortunate. As I mentioned earlier, I did have one element of a puzzle break on me where I got to the end and it gave me the dialogue that was meant to advance this part of the story, but a lift that was meant to come down and get me just didn't activate. So I had to replay that section, which took about 5 to 10 minutes and really wasn't too arduous or anything like that, but that is the only time that happened to me. I also did have a game crash, which is quite unfortunate, towards the last quarter of the game or so, but it did just autosave right before then, so I didn't lose too much progress, but again, not ideal. This makes it seem like the PSVR2 port of the game is awful though, and trust me, it isn't. It's just these issues are quite prominent, especially the frame drops, from maybe the halfway point onwards. Epyka overall, aside from that on PSVR2, is a good port. If they get this patched up, it will be great, because visually it looks really sharp in the headset, the colors pop fantastically, it's got use of haptics, headset rumble as well, especially towards the end, was really immersive, love the use of that. And it runs at 120Hz unreprojected, aside from those frame drops, of course, which is just so unfortunate. It's not like the game becomes ghosted or anything like that, it just genuinely drops to about 15 FPS in certain areas, if I had to guess. It's quite low. These don't last too long, as I said, but again, it's enough to disrupt the gameplay. And aside from that, it's so annoying because the rest of the game runs at 120Hz, smooth as butter, so when these moments do happen, you really feel it. But hopefully with a couple of patches, they can get that sorted and the game honestly will be flawless to play. Overall, I did enjoy my time with Epyka, but those frustrations from those few issues on PSVR2 did bring down my experience a bit, and the game is quite simple. And the story itself didn't surprise me with too much. But overall, it's a simple, fun adventure that with a couple of patches could be a great recommendation for a cheap, fun PSVR2 game. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Those are my thoughts on Epyka. Please do let me know in the comments below if you've already played it, and I hope to see you all in the next one.